let me just say, it's very easy to do a fan piece when you're in Buffalo. In Atlanta, I'm skeptical. So, Atlanta fans, if you're listening, tweet at me, DM me, email me, sean.barry@fox.com. Let me know where to go to get the best fan interviews before kickoff for a Thursday night game. I'm worried a little bit.
I don't think you'll find the environment to be similar to the one you found in Buffalo.
And you know what? That's fine. That can be the story too. That can be the story too.
They do it different here in the ATL.
You know what? Oh, man. I can do it. ATL's famous for strip clubs, right? Let's do it for one of them.
Hi, I'm Sean Barry outside of Magic City, where the chicken wings are good and the performances are better.
And speaking of getting the party started,
for the victory lap though. They ain't never seen nothing like this before. Lit the room when I came through the front door. Ask me if I stress overcome, what for? Train in the trees, please walk my sycamore. Touch burning sands, cross lands and stormy shore seasons in the year, yeah. Switch gears, with keeping haters in the rear. At the blood, sweat and tears and my goal so near. I see my victory so clear. I see my victory so clear. It's a day, we break through. 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 It's a day, we break through.
It's time for everybody's favorite podcast dealing in Formula One and football, and the only one on the planet that we know about that deals in those two categories. It's the Gridiron Podcast. I'm Sean Barry, as always, and joining me is Nick Shook. Not here this week is our Canadian queen, Katie Caldwell, because Nick, she's delivering a baby.
She is delivering a baby.
Yeah, it's not her baby. It's not her
hers.
baby. We just
she's not a midwife either.
No. It's just her friend's having a baby. She's there for moral support, and she's deathly afraid. So good luck to Katie and her friend as they witness the miracle of life together and experience that. But that's neither here nor there. This is episode 48 of the Gridiron Podcast. Like I said, we deal in Formula One and we deal in football. And this is not a Formula One guy, but I mean, you got to give him his flowers. This is the Jimmy Johnson episode of the Gridiron Podcast. 7-time Cup Series champ. I forget what they called it back then. Nextel Cup. Then I think it was the Monster Cup. It's the NASCAR Cup Championship. Jimmy Johnson, one of the American greats in racing. Not that great in IndyCar, though. But, that was kind of his retirement plan.
Sean, when I started watching NASCAR? When it was the Winston Cup Series, back when and tobacco sponsors were all the rage.
We are dating ourselves there, my friend. We are severely dating ourselves there, my friend. How you doing?
I'm good. It's how it is. My workload when we get to the start of the new NFL week and then all the way through basically tonight into tomorrow morning is like just nonstop. Like it's watch the games live, write about them, talk about them on NFL Daily, which we have 2 episodes up that Greg and I did, the Sunday Nighter and Week 2 recap and the Monday Nighter recap with some news and stuff like that. We have some fun segments in there. You can check that out. And it's just like a constant churn. And then I took 4 hours today to have lunch with my dad, my grandparents, my younger sister, to celebrate my dad's birthday, which is tomorrow. It's
very nice
that we get to celebrate his birthday, but it took that 4 hours out. So now I'm like a little bit behind. So it's been a grind, my friend. And we're going to be up late. We're going to burn the midnight oil to get QB Index done just for people out there listening right now.
Is your title officially NFL.com columnist?
Technically it's contractually it's talent writer. Visibly, like publicly, it's around the NFL writer because that's our news section, but I do a lot more than just the news.
He's the everyman. He's the Swiss Army knife of NFL.com. So check him out. Nick Shook.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
I do have to appreciate, though, on the NFL Daily podcast, you were talking to the people, the masses, about the just creepy backyard that you have. If you don't know, Nick's backyard is a cemetery. Okay. His house is literally surrounded on 2 sides by a cemetery that is it's been like closed for 100 years.
Yeah. So it's the oldest Jewish cemetery in Cleveland. The first Jewish person to be buried in Cleveland on record is right next to my dining room window.
I have been in his basement.
They've lacked the markings. They aren't even there anymore. And it's surrounded by a barbed wire fence.
I have been in Nick's basement, and I said, isn't it creepy to know that in 10 feet that direction, there are bodies literally buried? And he's like, nah, not really. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it
Were they making the
is.
caskets that nice back then? Like, did they really preserve the bodies that well? Or are we
No.
talking pine boxes here? Because if that's
Yeah.
the case, they're all
Still,
decomposed and part of the soil.
stuff I don't like to think about. You know,
Sean
I've
gets
never,
creeped out. Yeah, you
I
stayed
do
here
get
just
creeped
fine.
out. Hey, there's a cemetery next to your house, but you know what? I've never been woken up in the middle of the night when I've come to visit you by some shadowy figure. At least yet. At least yet. But I do appreciate how you talked about that on the NFL Daily podcast and the squirrels chasing each other around the trees.
Squirrels, groundhogs, neighborhood
Yeah.
cats. A lot of neighborhood cats who like to hang out in the front porch. It's
That
a
is, yeah,
riveting
feral
place
cats.
to live,
Yeah.
I'll tell you. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is the Gridiron Podcast. Like I said, we talk about NFL and Formula One. We're going to start with the NFL this week because, well, Nick is our resident NFL.com writer. So, Nick, I just want you, before we get into the meat and potatoes of it, to just explain as simple as you can and as best as you can what the hell happened there in week 2.
Upset City, baby. You know, it's not a call to action because I know the betting, marketplace is exploding, but I can't bet, as we've discussed in the show. But I think back to, like, if I were in a better shoes, because, like, I'll go to the gym and sit in the sauna and I hear guys talking about, yeah, I got money on this, or I bet on this, whether it's college football or the NFL. If I was a betting man, I would never bet on the NFL. The league is too close in terms of what is going to happen from one week to the next. Parity reigns supreme. That's why this league is the most popular league in America. And if it were me, I wouldn't put any money on games because I go out here picking games every week as part of my job. And I swung and missed on so many picks this past week because I took a little bit too much stock out of week 1, but also because anything can happen in this league any given Sunday. And we had so many upsets across the board, Sean. And we also have a team that we talked about as being a potential third place team in their division in our training camp preview series. I think you know who I'm talking about, who is lighting up the scoreboard through 2 weeks. Absolutely took the Cowboys to the woodshed. And their quarterback, crazy, 2 weeks, overreaction, I know. Keeps it up like this for half a season, he'll be in the MVP conversation.
I tweeted this out last night, and it didn't get a single retweet. I'm not as famous as you,
and
Nick.
Then he deleted it.
And I deleted it. But the question is, after the Falcons beat the Eagles, you had the Falcons beat the Eagles, you had the Bucks beat the Lions, and you had the Saints beat the Cowboys. This was a week to remember for the NFC South. One team, obviously.
Actually, no, it was memorable for them too, for bad reasons.
Let's all right. Before we get into why that was memorable for the Carolina Panthers, I tweeted, is the NFC South good? It might be.
Maybe.
It might have just gone from like the hands-on worst division in the NFL to maybe one of the best. Time will tell. Everyone was kind of riding high in the Atlanta Falcons. Obviously, the Bucks, who they are. We expect them to kind of be in that playoff conversation, if for the only reason that they will win the NFC South. But that's not even a given anymore, because you look at the Saints, they've scored 91 points through their first 2 weeks. That is tied for the second most a team has scored through their first 2 weeks in the Super Bowl era. The other 2 teams that have scored 91 or more went on to win the Super Bowl.
They won the Super Bowl.
Are we talking about?
I'm not. No.
Hold on.
No,
are we talking about the New Orleans Saints as Super Bowl contenders right now?
Look, I'm not going to go that far because it's only 2 weeks, and it's like baseball when a pitcher comes up from the minors and he throws a gem in his first outing, and everyone's like, "Whoa, look at this guy!" Then they get the book on them, and they fall back to earth. I feel like at some point the book will be out on the Saints, but what they're doing well, Sean, is really winning at the point of attack. Their offensive line is blocking their zone scheme so well that Alvin Kamara just has tons of room to run. He had 4 touchdowns in the game against the Cowboys on Sunday, and that, if you can start with a good ground game, that's always a threat. It opens everything else up. It takes the pressure off the pass protection. It stymies the pass rush. It allows Derek Carr to operate. I'm not going to call them Super Bowl contenders, primarily because I don't believe Dennis Allen is a Super Bowl worthy coach. But Clint Kubiak, the new OC, son of Gary, doing a hell of a job. Doing one hell of a job coordinating this offense. And if they can keep it up and be this high-powered team, they're going to be in the conversation for sure.
Any relation to Corey Kubiak?
No, it's Corey Kubasek.
Kubasek. Wow. I'm stepping in it tonight. I don't remember last names well. I'm sorry, Corey.
No, that's fair. It's close.
I have to say though, 91 points in 2024 is not the same as 91 points through 2 games back in 1991, which is what the Cowboys did and went on to win the Super Bowl. Like 91 points in 2024. Yeah, that makes sense because the passing game has been so developed and teams can almost score at will now.
But offensive passing touchdowns are way down. The passing game has not been actually very prolific in the NFL through 2 weeks. In fact, we are almost seeing a shift back toward the running game in the early 2000s style football, at least in terms of statistical production through 2 weeks. Might not hold, probably won't hold, but as of now, the Saints are like the only team that's really throwing the ball effectively consistently.
I'm going to go back to something that I said. I don't know if this was during our division previews or maybe it was even last season. Is that a symptom of, well, we're run heavy now, or is that a symptom of we don't have the same kind of elite talent that you and I got to watch growing up? I mean, think like I said, we got to watch Tom Brady, we got to watch Ben Roethlisberger, we got to watch the Mannings, we got to watch Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers. Like everywhere you look, there was a QB1 and a Hall of Fame level QB1. We don't have that right now. I mean, that's the simple fact of it. Right now, there is Patrick Mahomes, there's Josh Allen, there's Lamar Jackson. Obviously, there's still Aaron Rodgers, but he's on the tail end of his career. And maybe Joe Burrow, but like Justin, like what is Justin Herbert? What is Tua Tagovailoa? Well, like we don't have the same level that you and I got to watch growing up. And I think this run heavy game is now a symptom of that, honestly.
I think that there's a case to be made there. And if you actually look at the passing yards, the Dolphins led the league in passing yards. I'm literally filtering right now.
Right. Yeah.
5.5 last season. Right. And they're leading the league right now at 265.5. But after the first like 4 teams, it drops pretty steady. Like by the time you get down to the 6th team, we're at 235 a game. Whereas last year at the end of the year, you were looking at like 246 a game. So like there's a slight difference. It's really just like teams are not, my takeaway from watching every game through the 2 weeks, teams are not converting in the red zone. That's really what I think is hurting the offensive.
I mean, the Giants just won a game. The Steelers won a game week 1, kicking 6 field goals. The Giants won a game week 1, kicking 8.
Yeah. No, the Giants are 0-2. They lost a game.
Oh, I'm sorry. The Commanders won the game against the Giants.
7.
My bad. Kicking 7 field goals. You know what? At that point, does it even really matter who won the game?
I mean, yeah, you're right. But that's my point. Actually, in a nutshell, like that's case in point. Jaden Daniels has a very good game, 23 of 29, 226 yards passing. They rack up 425 yards of offense, and they don't score a touchdown because they can't finish in the red zone. Like they're between the 20s, great. Once they get inside the 20, not so great. And I've seen it from a lot of teams. So I think that's why we're seeing this weird production so far. But I do think that there is a good point that you just made with where we are as a league right now, because like, let's look at the winning teams from week 2, for example. You have the Las Vegas Raiders quarterbacked by Gardner Minshew, the Green Bay Packers quarterbacked by backup Malik Willis, the Minnesota Vikings quarterbacked by Sam Darnold, the Commanders with the rookie Jaden Daniels, the Atlanta Falcons with Kirk Cousins, and then the Pittsburgh Steelers with Justin Fields, like Geno Smith to the Seahawks. That's understandable. Baker Mayfield, like it's just that the elite level talent, like as I do QB index every week, we lost Tua already. And if you look at like some of the guys that I've listed I'm sorry,
I shouldn't laugh at that, but you say like we lost Tua already, and it's like it's very sad.
But
it's very sad
last year.
Man, real quick, I do want to go back to the Commanders. I know the lower third we have up says, are the Saints good? I think we're going off the rails a little bit, but
just not changing them.
No, that's okay. Do I like Jaden Daniels?
Yes, you should.
I think I do.
He needs to avoid fun. He needs to avoid hits.
He, I think, has impressed me the most of the rookie quarterbacks so far of the first 2 weeks. I did see a lot that I liked from Caleb Williams on Sunday Night Football. He made mistakes, but that's because he was trying to push the ball down the field. He's not making those stupid mistakes that we're seeing out of Will Levis or Bo Nix. You know, he is he's making smart decisions. We saw a lot of good is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
I think Chicago will be fine.
Yeah, what you saw from Caleb in that game was like there was a handful of plays, especially in that second half, where he would try to extend and make magic, and it would work at the college level. It worked for him a lot.
It worked a couple of times Sunday night.
In the NFL, it usually doesn't work. And that's how he threw 2 second half interceptions. Kamari Lassiter getting one, Derek Stingley getting another. The one that Stingley picked off. Williams put it in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
Last year was just a great play, and it was Williams trying to make magic. So, like, I think over time he'll figure it out. But that offensive line's so bad that, like, you can only judge him so much. He's got the natural talent. He definitely has that. Yeah. It's just a matter of, figuring it out within the flow of the game.
I definitely see. Now, this is the Chicago Bears we're talking about, so they have been known to ruin a quarterback or two in their lifetime or in the past decade. But I do see a lot that I like out of Caleb Williams. But Jaden Daniels, when I saw him down here in Tampa a week ago, I thought, you know what? I mean, he kept the Commanders in that game for a while with his legs.
Yeah.
And the Buccaneers let him do that because they focused so much on Terry McLaurin, and they were able to shut him down to their credit, but that opened up Jaden Daniels to do more with his legs. He had a good game against the Giants. I like what he's doing up there in Washington. I think they're pretty set at quarterback too.
Yeah, I think that's a pick that they'll be very happy with as long as he stays healthy. I think back to RG3's.
Well, that's the caveat for everything.
Yeah, but like RG3's rookie year with Washington, they got like the read option going, and he was, a dynamite player as a rookie until he tore his ACL. I just don't want Jaden Daniels to take as many hits to where that becomes a risk, because those do accumulate over time. So, like, learn how to slide, Jaden. Otherwise, everything else you're doing is pretty good. I like a lot of it.
Every once in a while, I will still, my Roman Empire is thinking about RG3 and what he could have been in this league had he stayed healthy.
Yeah. I mean, that happens with a lot of guys. I mean, we're talking Tua now, like, right. IR. That's one of the news items is like he's going to injured reserve, and who knows when he'll be back. Like, he says he doesn't intend on retiring, but reportedly. But
let's talk. You brought it up. Let's talk about Tua a little bit. He has that scary hit against Damar Hamlin on Thursday night, and a lot of people, myself included, look at that hit and go, how did you get concussed from the? First of all, my brother in Christ, slide. Please, just slide. But how do you get concussed from that? Like, you are wearing one of those high-crowned helmets that is supposed to protect you better, and you hit Damar Hamlin's bicep, his abdomen. And I'm not trying to make light of the situation. Please, that's not what I'm doing. It's a very scary situation. A lot of keyboard warriors now know what the term fencing position is, which is annoying. My 2 cents on this is none of us, okay, not even the people that have played this game before, I think, can tell Tua it's time to retire. You need to hang them up and just take care of yourself and take care of your family. Nobody, whether they played the game, whether they're a Hall of Famer in this game, whether they never played a snap of organized football like myself, no one can tell Tua it's time to retire. Only he can do that. Only he and his family can do that, because they're the ones in the room with the doctor. They're the ones with everything to gain and everything to lose. So I was really almost, and I knew this was going to be the narrative, but I was annoyed and I was kind of disheartened on Friday morning when, you have everybody and their mother saying, Tua needs to retire. It's time. You just got to take care of yourself, man. We don't know that. We're not in those doctor's offices. Calm down. Yeah. Is it scary? 100%, because this guy has had now 3 concussions in his 5-year career in the NFL, probably more undiagnosed, but it's overreaction to another level, because you don't know what's going on with Tua's body, and you're just judging off of what you saw in one play.
Well, it's scary, and it concerns you for his well-being, and what we know about head trauma and everything else. Obviously, that helps us out a lot more in coming to conclusions about guys' health. But again, like you said, you don't know what's going on. Really, more importantly to me, I know this is like very money oriented, but it's a fact of life. He just signed a massive extension that does not kick in yet. He kind of has something to play for, and it's some of that money. Not to mention, like, he's only been in the NFL for a handful of years as it is. I don't think that he would walk away unless doctors looked him dead in the eye and said, it's best if you don't play. Like, I think he'll probably give it a go until he's told that. And even then, he'll probably have a hard time walking away. Look, man, when your whole identity is built around football, I went through this myself, when I was like 19. When your whole identity is built around being a football player and then suddenly football is over, it's really hard to figure out who you are and what you want to be next. It's really hard to give that up. There are 3 instances that in which players' careers end. They either retire on top or as like a venerated legend of their franchise. They retire because of health issues, or the game retires them because they age out or they get older, they have too many injuries. Jarvis Landry is kind of my example that comes to mind right now. Even if you don't want to retire. And so ideally you retire on top and you don't medically retire. So I think Tua will be back. It's funny though, because you mentioned how annoying that was. I was watching that game at a bar downtown, and the guy next to me instantly just goes, "Man, he bet you he's done, man. Another one. I think he's done. I think he's done." I'm just like, oh. Like I actually, Sean, I've gone out and watched the first 2 Thursday night games in public just to get out of the house. I was reminded why I don't watch games in public. The average football fan, holy hell, like, shut up. I don't care how this hurts your fantasy team or your bets. Like, but that one took me to a new level where I was just like, oh, you watch morning talk shows. I'm sure you do. I'm sure you'll be tuned in tomorrow. So we'll see what happens. IR means he's going to at least miss a month. That's a cautionary measure on the Dolphins.
It's probably also just possible. It's probably also just the right move. If for the only reason, optics, honestly, like there was 2 years ago when he got hit, his head slammed off the turf. He pops back up and then stumbles, and then they put him back in the game. That was such a bad look. And then the next week is when he got that major concussion where we saw him in the fencing position, for the first time. And then it happened again this last Thursday. Look, I don't want Tua to retire because we tell him he has to retire. I think that's the point I'm getting at. I want him to come to that decision on his own with him and his wife and his family. If that's the decision that he and his doctors and the team feel are best, more power to him. But we cannot tell Tua and decide for him that he needs to retire because, well, I saw him in the fencing position, and that means bad. You know what I mean?
No,
we don't know. We don't have degrees.
We have enough Twitter doctors as it is.
Exactly.
We don't
Exactly.
do that stuff.
More power to him. I hope he heals, and I hope he does what's best for him, whether that means playing again or not. That's his decision, and I hope he makes peace with that. Let's just talk about week 2 real quick. We kind of alluded to this. 6 betting upsets that I could see. I went through the betting slips, and I know, Nick, you cannot bet. You do not bet. You can't even step foot in a casino. You do not. I'm just saying that in terms of Vegas, there were 6 upsets this week in 16 games. That's pretty wild. And just running through them, obviously, I mean, speaking of, the Dolphins were favorites at home. They got blown out by the Bills, who are starting to look really good despite a depleted offensive weapons room, I guess you could say. The Lions. Yeah. The Lions were favored over the Bucks. The Cowboys favored over the Saints. Colts favored over the Packers. Niners over the Vikings. Let's see. The Chargers were favored. I'm kidding. The Chargers were favored over the Panthers.
Well, yeah.
I think the Jags were favored over the Browns. Yeah, the Jags.
They were favored. I think they were.
The Ravens were favored over the Raiders. Yeah. It was obviously the Eagles over the Falcons. It was just everywhere you looked. Like you said at the beginning of the show, it's impossible to bet on the NFL because there's so much parity.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah. Is this just a symptom of the parity, or was this just a weird week?
Well,
because Gardner Minshew sent the Ravens to 0-2. 0-2.
It's only week 2, and that is part of why it's hard to pick these games early in the year because you don't know who these teams are. Like I didn't see the Saints dropping 44 on the Cowboys, even after what they did against the Panthers in week 1, because it was the Panthers. Gardner Minshew and the Raiders authored one hell of a comeback over the Ravens. They were down by 10 points. They should not have won that game, and they found ways to win that game. Devontae Adams had a phenomenal second half, and they're a fun team to watch. Their defense is pretty good, and if they can do enough offensively, they're going to be a fun team to watch, for weeks and weeks ahead. I'm not saying they're going to win the AFC West, but they're going to be an entertaining team. Like that, I think about some of the upsets, like the Browns threw it down such a stinker in week 1 that you didn't know what they were going to be. And then their defense returned to form that they had last year and shut down. Trevor Lawrence had 15 passing yards at halftime. It was bad. And then the Packers, they were going in a weird situation because they didn't have their starting quarterback. And everyone was like, well, we don't expect Malik Willis to do much. He didn't have to do much because Matt LaFleur put together a masterful game plan that looked like a college game plan, a lot of pre-snap motion, a lot of, runs to the perimeter, Josh Jacobs carrying the load, everything else. So The Cardinals dominate the Rams because Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. remembered they were on the same team and scored twice in the first quarter. This is the NFL. Like it's tough to get a read on teams early, and the talent difference is not like college football. There are no guarantees, and I'm not talking about NIU, Notre Dame. I'm just talking about in general. There are no massive talent disparities in the NFL. This is the best of the best, and just depending on the week, anything can happen.
To be fair, there are no talent disparities in the NFL unless you are the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, one of the least talented rosters in the NFL in a long time.
One at least. Before we're going to get to the Carolina Panthers in 1 second, I do just want to say that I did see a stat that since the league has shifted to a 7-team per conference playoff format a couple of years ago, of the teams that have started 0-2, only 17% have gone on to qualify for the playoffs. In the AFC North, your top 2 favorites to win that division and or maybe even the Super Bowl out of that division are sitting at 0-2 in the bottom of the division. Again, it's just 2 weeks. There is another 16 weeks to go, and the Ravens and Bengals can absolutely turn it around. The Bengals look great against the Chiefs. They just committed one defensive pass interference that once again ruined their game against the Chiefs. But it's not, statistically at least, looking good for either of those two teams.
No, it's not. But it is early. And if there are any teams that can figure out how to bounce back, it's the Bengals, who routinely start slow. And it's the Ravens, who lost a lot on their defensive coaching staff in the offseason, but they were in both of these games and they're 2 close losses. They're going to really look back and think, damn, we should have lost to the Raiders. But I think they'll be able to get back on track. I mean, if you look at their schedule, like Dallas, Buffalo, Cincinnati, Washington is a tough stretch until you get to Washington. Then you Tampa, Cleveland. That's tough.
That's tough.
Denver, since I mean, this is a tough schedule.
Hey,
like, they're going to have to fight their way out.
I was going to say, if I had to pick one of those two teams to say, they'll be all right, it's not the Ravens. It's the Bengals.
The Bengals,
honestly,
the Bengals, yeah.
When I look at what they can do, I feel better about the Bengals than I do about the Ravens. Which
I also
for me as a
like
Steelers fan feels great, but I still hate the Bengals.
Yeah, you and your 2-0 team. I didn't like the way.
Hey, buddy, Justin Fields, let him cook. I don't want to talk about that. I know. I don't want to talk about the Steelers other than they're the most boring football team ever to watch. And my grandfather, God rest his soul, probably loves it. I just this past weekend got his high school Letterman jacket letter sitting in a box back there behind my desk. And he is probably looking down going, that's football right there.
Yep. Defense wins championships.
Buddy, I tell you what. All right, let's talk about the Panthers because they kind of led the news this week, and we, in this fact, buried the lead. But Bryce Young, number 1 overall pick a year ago, has only played 18 games in the NFL, has now been benched.
Yeah, and
Dave, sorry, go ahead.
I'm gonna say this pretty simply here, Sean. You're a Dave Canales guy. I think Dave Canales looked at the franchise's recent history. Frank Reich being fired after 11 games, Matt Rule getting the boot after a few years. And I think he saw it and thought, this isn't a patient club, and I need to do what's best for the team and not for this quarterback's development that I didn't draft. I'm going to the guy that gives us the best chance to win because we need to actually be competitive because I might be coaching for my job before long. Like, it's better to do it now. The weird thing is that they didn't even talk about like getting Bryce back on track. They were just like, this is the best chance we have.
Thank you. That is what I took away from today. Look, on Sunday, Dave Canales was asked after the embarrassing loss to the Chargers about Bryce Young, and he said Bryce Young is our quarterback. Less than 24 hours later, the news comes out that he is benching Bryce Young. Dave Canales was hired because, yes, he's charismatic and he's good looking and he's been on the fast track to stardom. But he has been hired by Carolina because he has been dubbed this quarterback whisperer. He was the quarterback's coach in Seattle. He helped revive Geno Smith's career. He was the offensive coordinator last year in Tampa Bay. Lo and behold, Baker Mayfield goes from a journeyman to a guy that has found a home in a $100 million contract here in Tampa Bay. He gets hired in Carolina, and he says, I can help Bryce Young. I was brought in to help Bryce Young. 2 games in, he goes, yes, this guy ain't it. My question, Nick, is, was it Dave Canales taking a look in the mirror and going, I need to coach for my job and Bryce Young ain't it? Or was it David Tepper, known, let's put it nicely, meddler? Was it him saying bench him?
Canales said that it was a decision that he made, but he consulted with everybody in the front office and everything else, Dan Morgan, the new GM, a bunch of other front office personnel, and Tepper, chose to keep those conversations private for obvious reasons. But I do think this is a Dave Canales move. I think this is him going, look, man, I don't have time to waste. Like, it might be my first year, but like, I didn't get hired solely to save Bryce Young. I got hired to turn this team around. Like, he owes it to the other 21 guys on both sides of the ball to give them their best chance to win. And I think it's pretty obvious. Now, will Andy Dalton make it through a full season healthy? Probably not. But the last time that he did play for the Panthers, he started one game last year. It was on the road against Seattle fairly early in the season. It was their best offensive showing by a long shot. Dalton went for 361 and 2 touchdowns. They lost to the Seahawks by 10, but they were competitive. Couldn't really say that about them for most of the year otherwise. They finished dead last in passing, and I think they about doubled their usual output through the air in that game. So, like, off that information alone, yeah, this is the right move to be competitive, because what you don't want to do is find yourself like 0-6 with Bryce Young. Like, there's no way out of that. You might as well do it now and try and get a couple wins and see where the season takes you, because if Andy Dalton doesn't play every game, then Bryce Young will see the field at some point again. But even Zach Wilson was afforded the whole, like, he needs time to reset and, you know, kind of just learn the game more. They didn't even say that about him there. So, and again, Sean, this matters so much in pro sports, especially in the NFL. If it's not the guy you invested in and you made the pick of, oftentimes those new regimes don't care about that. They're not tied to them. And this is not a regime that picked Bryce Young.
Yeah, but he was brought in because of Bryce Young and because he was
the qualifications got him in the door, and it's not going to save his job if they suck with Bryce Young.
So is Bryce Young's tenure done in Carolina? He might play a game or two here because of injury, but is he done in Carolina?
Yeah, I think so. I think that this might be the last we see of him, save for if Andy Dalton gets hurt. And it sucks. It's kind of unprecedented. We talked about this in NFL Daily last night. Like, it's pretty unprecedented to see a guy drafted number 1 overall and benched so quickly. Even Jamarcus Russell got a longer run with the Raiders than that. But it's the results-based business, and the patience runs thinner than ever right now. You got to go win some games, man, especially for a franchise like the Panthers, who are desperate to just have some success. So it makes a lot of sense. And yeah, this might be the last we see of Bryce Young.
I agree with you. And I also agree with you in thinking that this was a Dave Canales move.
It was.
I don't think it was a Tepper move, because a lot of people come and say, oh, Dave Canales wouldn't do this. Yeah, he would, man. Like, he's a coach, and he can read film, right? He can watch film, and he can see that this kid either isn't getting it, doesn't have the confidence, or just won't get it. So I agree with you. I think Bryce Young's tenure is done in Carolina. At the same time, the silver lining is, look, we're seeing a resurgence in Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Geno Smith. Guys can sit a couple of years, even half a decade, and come back and be a starter in this league. So it's not unheard of. But at the end of the day, the Carolina Panthers, let's not forget, traded 3 first-round picks to get up 1 spot from 2 to 1 to take a 5'9", 180-pound soaking wet quarterback. And
what did I say? What did I say then, Sean? I told you CJ Stroud was QB1. I was like, I don't think Bryce is the guy.
No. Let's roll the tape. After the combine, you said you liked CJ Stroud, but you thought Bryce Young would still go first and you would still take him first. And I said, no, I think CJ Stroud is the first quarterback.
I can't confirm that, but
I'll
find it. I'll try to find it and put it in.
Memory like a steel trap, buddy. I thought CJ Stroud was the number 1 overall pick. I liked him over Bryce Young, and I thought the Panthers did too. I'm not surprised that they're picking Bryce Young so much as I am surprised that CJ Stroud seems to be kind of tumbling down draft boards a little bit. Like, he might not be number 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. Like, that's what I'm most surprised about.
I was at the pro day, and he was right there next to his teammates, cheering them on the bench press, cheering them on in certain things before he went and did his thing. Seems like he's a guy that everybody likes. So there's no Bo Callahan, nobody shows up at his birthday party type thing here. So what is the question? I don't know. Maybe it's just a matter of preference. I'm not sure. If it was me and I had a team that I thought was built to welcome in a rookie quarterback and play him right away and have success, I would go CJ Stroud, because I think his accuracy is unmatched in this class. It's not the strongest class, but I think that he's the best when it comes to accuracy. But apparently people think that, you know, the people in Carolina at least think that Bryce Young is head and shoulders the guy. So it is interesting that it went from being a debate to being a foregone conclusion. But I think whoever gets CJ Stroud is probably going to be pretty happy. It's hard to argue with the tape. It's hard to argue with the results that he's produced.
Memory
Well,
like a
I
steel
can
trap.
tell you, I was coming away from CJ's workout blown away. So I don't know what to tell you. I don't like to be, I told you so, but I never felt like Bryce was a consensus number one like he was being made out to be.
Yeah. Anything else on the NFL this week before we move on to week 3?
2 things real quick, Sean. Sam Darnold's fun, okay? The Darnold
Yes.
Renaissance is on, baby, okay?
Case Keenum reborn in the Great White North.
Better than Case, even. 17
Yes.
for 26, 268, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick. I mean, he looks like a different guy. He looks better than he did at USC. He's still got the arm strength. He's not making the drastic mistakes that kill his team. He's not sped up in the pocket. He looks comfortable, decisive, confident. Third down, key third down in this game. Rips a pass down the seam to Jalen Naylor for a first down between 3 defenders over Fred Warner, who had picked him off earlier. I'm super impressed. I'm blown away. I'm not saying it's going to hold necessarily, but through 2 games, I'm very impressed by what I've seen from Sam Darnold.
I think it might hold. Honestly, he's playing so lights out. Derek Carr.
Evan O'Connell, baby.
Out. Like, honestly, give these guys their flowers. Derek Carr, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield. This 2-3 years ago, this would have been unthinkable. Unthinkable. Yep. When is it going to be Zach Wilson time in Denver? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We do not need to see that. You said 2 things. Was there another?
The other thing is, well, number one, the Cardinals are really fun, and everybody should watch them, even if they don't win a ton of games, because Kyler's healthy and he's having
I still don't know what he is, but I will watch him because Marvin Harrison Jr.
I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you, man. He's better than I think we remembered. He really is. Like Cliff Kingsbury's gone. It's like the leash is off. And
yeah, fair point.
Which is great because I never thought that was a good fit. And we're kind of seeing the Cliff impact on Jaden Daniels with their lack of ability to get in the end zone in Washington. The other thing, Sean, you saw the Monday night game, right? You saw how the Eagles blew it. Should they have thrown the ball on third down? I am in the camp that they should have ran it twice.
To be fair, it was the right play call.
Talk to me.
Why was it not the right play call?
Because they have no timeouts left. There's a minute 50.
Look, I get it, but you're asking Saquon Barkley, who is good at catching passes out of the backfield,
who's also good at running between the tackles,
to just catch a pass.
Yeah,
I've seen. Look, I'm a Penn State fan, so I saw Saquon Barkley play wideout at times in Happy Valley.
He can return
and catch bombs from Trace McSorley. And return kicks for him, exactly. So why could you not just ask him? Look, everyone's going to say, "Oh, it was the wrong play call." And I guess, hindsight is 20/20, but it was the right play call because had he just caught the ball, we would not be talking about the Eagles blowing this lead.
But he did.
We do have to give Kirk Cousins his flowers and Drake London, who ran an absolute just disgusting route on that touchdown pass to seal the deal. Maybe the Falcons can do what we thought they were going to do. I'm just happy it was against the Eagles.
I think they saved their season on Monday night. Look, I will say,
wow, saved their season in week 2.
Yeah, man, 0-2. Their next 3 are incredibly tough. Do you want to see what their next 3 games are? It's wild. I didn't even realize it. Versus this, okay, they're all at home, but Chiefs, Saints, Bucks. If they didn't win last night, they could be facing the potential of going 0-5 and calls for Michael Penix. Like that's very possible.
Geez, I'm getting ready to go to that week 5 game up in Atlanta, and I have to go to a meeting tomorrow, and I know they're like, Sean, go get some interviews with some fans, get some tailgating, because I did this story last year. The Bucks were in Buffalo for a Thursday night game. We went up there. Let me just say, it's very easy to do a fan piece when you're in Buffalo. In Atlanta, I'm skeptical. So, Atlanta fans, if you're listening, tweet at me, DM me, email me, sean.barry@fox.com. Let me know where to go to get the best fan interviews before kickoff for a Thursday night game. I'm worried a little bit.
I don't think you'll find the environment to be similar to the one you found in Buffalo.
And you know what? That's fine. That can be the story too. That can be the story too.
They do it different here in the ATL.
You know what? Oh, man. I can do it. ATL's famous for strip clubs, right? Let's do it for one of them.
Hi, I'm Sean Barry outside of Magic City, where the chicken wings are good and the performances are better.
We did a food review last year at the Anchor Bar, home of the Buffalo Wing in Buffalo, and I told my boss, I said, "Hey, you know what Atlanta's famous for?" He goes, "What?" I said, strip clubs. I was like, we could just go to a food review there. I have heard their food is very good. I say this as someone that has actually never been to a strip club before in my life, and that's the truth. But hey, do a food review. You know, our bosses would have a cow, but it'd be fun. It'd be great for ratings.
What is this world? I've never been here.
All right. Anything else now in the NFL? Let's get to F1.
No, that's it.
All right. Switching gears, we're heading over to F1. Where were we this week, Nick?
Baku, Azerbaijan Grand Prix.
You know what I noticed as I was watching this race, and I think I just have never picked up on it before. Do you remember when we started watching F1 back in 2020 and the fans were banned from attending races because of the pandemic? That's what Baku is. There's no fans there. There's like 2 grandstands, and then the rest of the city is just empty. And it's not even like other city races or other street races where you have like fans hanging out of high rises and having parties. Like they show that in Monaco and they show that in Singapore and in Abu Dhabi. Like they're just, and in Miami's not really a street race. Technically it is, but in other street races, they just show like fans basically partying around the track. There are no fan shots in Azerbaijan, and it's creepy at times. It is very creepy. Regardless, it delivered a good race. It delivered a good race. It's a street track, which means it's kind of hard to overtake, but it has such long straights that it gives an opportunity to overtake on the straights. Oscar Piastri from McLaren coming home P1, followed by Charles Leclerc in Ferrari P2, and then in P3, George Russell for the second time this season, just cleaning up after a couple of crashes in front of him. So good on him. Lando Norris coming home P4, taking 3 points out of that championship battle with Max Verstappen, who finished P5. The gap from Norris to Verstappen is now 59 points with 7 races plus 3 sprint races to go. So still everything to play for. Before we talk about McLaren, Nick, because we gotta, having watched this race, has your heart rate gone down yet? Because after Oscar Piastri passed Charles Leclerc, which was a ballsy pass into turn 1 on lap 31 of 50, after he passed him for the next 19 laps, I was expecting that McLaren, with all of its speed and its downforce, to just pull away from Charles in the Ferrari. It did not. No. I don't think Charles ever was beyond that 1 second gap until Sergio Perez from Red Bull caught up to him in the final few laps. And that's when you saw Oscar build a 1.5 second gap. But that was an exhilarating race because every turn you saw Oscar right behind him, Charles, right behind him, Sergio. That was racing.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the overtake, which was beautiful. The latest beautiful overtake on the part of Oscar Piastri. He did one at Monza that was beautiful as well on his teammate. It was the defending. I mean, Charles had multiple attempts with DRS and looked like he was going to overtake him. And Oscar just put the car in the perfect spot every time to hold him off, slams the door on the inside going into turn 1, holds the position going into turn 2 and out of turn 2. And then Charles starts to lose rear grip on the tires and it gets a little skittish coming out of turn 2 and can't ever make up the difference. And suddenly behind him, there's Sergio, and then there's Carlos Sainz. And you're just like, by the time the race ended, I was like, that was a masterful drive from a guy who has not even been in F1 very long. I know he's got probably the best car in the grid, right?
39 races. That's it.
He raced it like Lewis Hamilton. Like, yes, that's how he looked that experience. And then afterward, he just goes, yes. And then he goes, probably the most stressful day of my life.
I mean, it would be too if you saw that you could not pull away from the guy you just passed for nearly half the race, and you saw him in your wing mirrors. I mean, yeah, that's stressful. Now, real quick, Oscar has been amazing. Now, you know that I named my dog after Lando Norris, technically. Here he is, sleeping, eyes rolled into the back of his head. I dub thee Oscar Lando Norris Barrie.
Oh, wow. Well, that's
at least until next week. No, what Oscar has shown last 7 races, no one has scored more points than Oscar Piastri. He has, before our eyes, become a real championship contender. The funny thing is that coming into this week, coming off a week break, McLaren publicly came out and said, we are putting our full weight behind Lando Norris. He has a chance in these last 8 races to catch Max Verstappen. It's a foregone conclusion that McLaren are going to win the constructors title, which they now lead by 20 points because in the final few laps are at like, what was it? Penultimate lap?
50th, yes, penultimate lap. Yeah. 50
Penultimate lap. Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez come together, thus moving Lando from 6th up to 4th, and also taking one car out of Red Bull's points. So McLaren are now ahead of Red Bull by 20 points in the Constructors' Championship. They're going to just soar past. And honestly, Ferrari might catch Red Bull at this point with how bad that car looks. Lando Norris, 59 points behind Max Verstappen. There is still time to do this. And coming into Baku, McLaren, like I said, we're going to put our full weight behind Lando. Oscar was asked about it and said, basically, I'm paraphrasing, but, it's not, no driver likes to be told, you're not going to be our priority. But he did say that there are bigger things than himself at play. Good teammate move by him. Call it Papaya Rules. What Papaya Rules? Because Lando had some bad luck in qualifying, didn't make it out of Q3 because of a yellow flag that literally lasted all of a half a second that he got caught by. And next thing you know, Oscar qualifies P2. Lando qualified P17, but because of some penalties and power units, he started P15. Makes it to P4, so that's great. Made up 11 places. That's a great drive from Lando. Honestly, he had a great day, but we're talking about his teammate winning a race that could have been Lando. He could have taken 20 points out of Max's lead instead of 3. It really is starting to get down to now or never. And now Oscar is only 19 points behind Lando. I don't think, to be fair, I don't think that McLaren are going to say, well, now let's just let him race, because they've already said it's Lando. We are putting our full weight behind Lando.
But here's the thing. If Lando struggles in qualifying again and Oscar doesn't, they're in the same position in another couple of races, and Oscar wins and Lando's an X amount of points behind, suddenly it gets interesting enough that you think, well, now he's our best shot, right?
I don't think so. Here's the thing. Lando didn't struggle in qualifying. It was unlucky that he got caught by that yellow flag. And meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton, who was like a second or two behind him, didn't get caught by that yellow flag. So the yellow flag showed up on Lando's dash. He had to abide by it, and it screwed him. So he didn't struggle in qualifying. Obviously, McLaren does not struggle in qualifying. But this just stresses the importance of when you are out on track, just get your lap time in. You never know if it's going to be a red flag, if it's going to rain. Like, just get your lap time in, and that's what they should have done. That being said, Lando's just got to start chipping away. 3 points is not enough. It's got to be like 6, 7, 8. I think the math, it's got to be like 6 points a race right now. And then you got to win a couple of those sprint races. Right now, Max is so vulnerable, and they're heading into Singapore, which Red Bull has publicly said we are not going to do well. And you are looking at the possibility of Max Verstappen maybe not scoring any points.
I wouldn't go that far, but yeah.
It's possible, man. It is possible in a street, because that place is hard to pass in. Singapore is very hard to pass in. If Lando can start on pole and not lose a lap on the opening lap, or not lose a place on the opening lap, which isn't a given these days, you're talking about him taking 20, 25 points out of Max's championship lead. That is insane. But at the same time, you got Ferrari back there. Ferrari is only 13 points behind Lando, Charles Leclerc that being. And then, like I said, Oscar Piastri, 6 points behind that. So 19 points behind Lando. All of this builds up to a great final 7 races.
Oh, we are in for a treat. But Sean, let's introduce something we've never done on the Gridiron podcast before that I just came up with off the top of my head right now. Given the situation, the circumstances that you just laid out regarding Lando Norris, let's take a look at your confidence meter on Lando Norris. 1 to 10.
Don't make me do this.
1 being completely, like, you have no idea what's going to happen. No confidence in the guy. Don't trust him at all. 2, 10, fully confident. How confident are you in Lando Norris being able to handle the pressure of the situation? Let's say he scores pole and he has to go into turn 1 and has to finish the first lap with the lead. Let's say he has an opportunity presented to him where he could take 20 points out of Max's lead. You could get a race win and a 25 to wherever Max finishes in the points, somewhere along there, maybe 26-6. How confident are you that Lando will actually deliver? Because in my opinion right now,
okay, hold on.
Between the 2 drivers, it's Oscar Piastri.
Hold on. Okay. What is the question? Because there's several levels to that.
The question is, where's your confidence meter with Lando Norris? Is he going to get the job done?
not to get too technical, but from what you just described, I mean, my confidence meter rises as the race goes on. Let's just say it like that. He's not great at the starts, or hasn't been this season. He is
Okay, so full picture.
never.
Full picture.
6.8. 6.8.
That's about where I would put it. Yeah.
Because here's the thing, if he starts on pole and can finish, he has started on pole 4 times this season, I believe, and has never led after lap 1 when he has started on pole. That is insane to me, because if you've ever watched this sport for more than even a couple of races, you know that normally when you start on pole and you have a halfway decent car, you are at least going to lead a couple of laps, right? He just hasn't been able to do that, either because of Max Verstappen or because his teammate has just dive bombed him.
Because he's a choke artist.
Would you let me finish, Nick?
Would you let me finish? I'm just throwing
However, once the race gets going, his racecraft, his tire management, his race pace is just it's very good. It's elite. And so as the race progresses, my confidence in him rises. He does not make mistakes, but neither does Oscar Piastri. His one knock, Oscar's one knock, was his race pace and excuse me, his tire management. He's fixed both of those things. Right now, McLaren have 2 number 1 drivers. Next year, this is going to get very, very steamy.
Rosberg and Hamilton.
It's going to get very, very steamy because they are good friends for now. I would say my confidence in Lando is about a 6.8. If he leads the race after lap 1, it jumps up to like an 8.5 because he does not make mistakes. And the only reason it's not a 10, that 1.5 is reserved for McLaren just making a mistake with their strategy, because they did it again this week. They asked Lando Norris when he was in front of Sergio Perez before he had pitted.
Like 2 laps.
Yeah, but they said, hey, Lando, would you mind slowing Perez down? Because McLaren forgot to cover Perez.
Yeah.
They forgot to account for Red Bull, the lead Red Bull in this race. And when they brought Oscar in for a pit stop, hey, Lando, Papaya Rules, but opposite. Can you hold Perez up? And Lando's like, yeah, fam, I got you. Great team player. And I love how Perez was so PO'd that he held him up. He's like, do you see him? He is holding me up. And like, we see, Sergio. Sergio, your nickname is the Mexican Minister of Defense because you held up Lewis Hamilton in that title race back in 2021.
Yeah, on the broadcast, they talked about it. They were like, Sergio might be upset, but he's got plenty of experience doing the same thing.
I'm sorry, Sergio. No one feels bad for you. You deliberately held up Lewis Hamilton in a championship race. So let's pump the brakes there, my friend. Lando did a great job doing that. Oscar goes on to win the race. So to make a long point short, my confidence rises in Lando and in McLaren as the race progresses.
See, I think
he doesn't make mistakes. He does not make mistakes later on.
But every time we see Lando pressed in a moment of pressure, he tends to not come out of it looking as solid as steel reinforced concrete. Okay. And the pressure really mounts in turn 1 and lap 1. And that's obviously not the only situation in which I am mentioning that, but I would put my confidence near like a 5 or 6, just because he's had moments like Zandvoort where he pulled away, but like once he's in the clean air, he's just got to drive his race, right? He's just got to race his race. Don't make any mistakes. So he doesn't make any mistakes, but he never was really pressured in most of that race. I wonder if it gets really tight in the last few races, if he's mentally built to handle that pressure. We haven't seen it yet. We don't know. And that's my big question mark with him, especially if it's his teammate pushing him by the end of the year.
Well, the problem is his teammate won't be pushing him. Like, Papaya Rules are still instated. They are throwing their weight behind Lando.
Okay, but I want to point this out about the strategy. The reason that you were right that they made that mistake by not covering up Sergio Perez, but they were only in that situation because of Lando's qualifying mishap. So, like, it's not like the whole prioritization thing kind of went out the window as soon as qualifying ended, right? And
yeah.
Not saying it's going to happen again, but if it does happen again, then that kind of goes out the window again, because you have to go with the guy with the higher position.
Yeah, true. Here's the thing. That was so weird. When's the last time McLaren failed to get out of Q3, right? Like even at the beginning of the season when they were middle of the field car, they looked to be like the 4th or 5th fastest car at the start of this season. I mean, they still were making it into Q2 to Q3. Like this was just a wow. It had to happen on this weekend of all weekends after we said we're going to prioritize Lando. Like just bad luck strikes. I mean, honestly, I don't think Lightning is going to strike twice.
But I think
it could, but it absolutely could.
There's room for this to get really hairy and really interesting. It's not as clean cut as we think it is.
I know. And you know what? I was listening to the P1 podcast today with Matt and Tommy. Go check them out. Not friends of ours. I just admire their work. But they said this is the most boring championship chase ever. And they're kind of right because there's so much parity in F1 right now, which we have been clamoring for.
The NFL gets.
but at the same time, there wasn't at the beginning of the season, and that allowed Max Verstappen to build up such a lead. Now we have George Russell winning races, Lewis Hamilton winning races, Oscar Piastri, Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, all winning races. And when you have a championship battle, you want a Lewis versus Max a la 2021. You want them battling back and forth, taking a win here and there. Now it's like, okay, Lando finished 4th. He took 3 points out of Max because Oscar won. Or last week, Lando took 10 points out of Max because Charles won. Like that's what we're getting. We're getting true racing. In any other sport, we would love this, but it's like, damn it, I want Lando taking more points out of Max. Like I want more. But there's so much parity that it's actually, if you think about it, it's hurting the championship fight.
For now, but we have a lot of races left, and I think it's going to get tight.
That is the thing. 3 sprint races, 7 Grand Prix. There is still all to play for, and there is a 59-point gap between Lando Norris and Max Verstappen. Buckle your seatbelts, tighten your helmet straps. This is go time. I love this sport in this scenario.
I also think it's a beautiful time for the proponents of the sprint race to be like, they do matter. They do matter.
Of which we are not. We hated the sprint races, and now
speak for yourself.
Sprint races. We need them.
Speak for yourself.
Bring it home, Lando. It is race week, Singapore. Podium predictions, Nick?
Whoo, buddy. Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, and Charles Leclerc. I think about his performance at Monaco. I want to throw a Mercedes in there, but Lewis seems to be struggling with the car again. George Russell did not deserve that podium. I was shocked to see Sergio Perez drive as well as he did in that race. I don't think that carries over. So that's going to be my 3. Oh, man, I took your answer. He was cheating off my test.
Gonna go with, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm going to go with the same 3. McLaren will prioritize Lando. It might even be a situation where they tell Oscar to give up the win for Lando. They might do that. But I'm going to take Lando, Oscar, and Charles. Could be Carlos as well. I think Ferrari are in a position now. They're looking pretty good. They're going to pass Red Bull at some point there for 2nd place in the Constructors' Championship. But then again, I say McLaren is going to win the Constructors' Championship, and they're going to celebrate. They're going to come out with T-shirts, and I'll buy one because I'm a simp. That does not matter. Nobody looks at the history of the Constructors' Championship first. They look at the Drivers' Championship first.
Yep.
And as long as Max Verstappen wins that, Red Bull's golden. McLaren is looking for the double this year. Make no mistake. But yes, in Singapore, I'm going to go with Lando P1, Oscar P2, and Charles P3. I'm worried about Red Bull. They seem very worried about their car this time around. This could get hairy. This could get hairy real fast.
Yeah.
We could possibly be looking at it's a 59-point deficit now. We could be looking at a 37-point deficit when all is said and done.
I mean, take it down by 10 a race if you want. Suddenly it gets real tight. Like that's possible. It's very much in play. I want to backtrack real quick just because it was one thing that I want to talk about in the last race that we didn't get to. That penultimate lap crash that you mentioned.
Yes, thank you. I was going to do that.
Whose fault was that, in your opinion?
I'm going to go against the grain here.
Mm.
It was Carlos's fault.
Yeah, I agree.
It was, look, listen to me. I drive daily in the hellscape that is Florida. If you have not driven in Florida, you don't know what I'm talking about. The bullshit that I deal with daily. That was the bullshit that I saw from Carlos Sainz. Now, look, I get it. He was ahead at turn 2, okay? And he was drifting to the inside. Both him and Sergio were trying to get the toe off of Charles. Here's the problem. Sergio had the inside line, and Carlos was trying to get back on the racing line. Everyone can say, well, Sergio could have given him some more room. Well, Carlos could have not moved over because Carlos's excuse and defense was, well, I just did what every driver did in that entire race, which was move minutely. He listed lazily to the left, Nick. Carlos Sainz listed lazily to the left. He had some maneuvers up his bag. But he was the one that turned the wheel, not Sergio.
Yep.
So it was a racing incident, 100%. But it was, I would give 60% blame to Carlos.
Yep, and majority rules, and I agree with you. And no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, I feel like a lot of people were like, "Oh, Sergio could have moved over because he was behind." Yeah, but Carlos could have also not moved his steering wheel because Sergio didn't. Sergio was right; he was there. And also, I'm sorry, but you have rear view mirrors on your car. Like you can see, you can look to the left. Sergio didn't, or Carlos didn't.
We have one contributor from the chat. It is our friend Troy Meeker on the YouTube side who is saying, I once again request that you bring back. Do you even know?
Troy, you're not beating a dead horse.
You're not.
We're working on it.
And we're not working on it like, hey, did you take the trash out? Hey, did you fold the laundry? We are working on it. But Katie's also not here. So
true.
So
we can't do it this week.
Yeah. But we will bring it back in a slightly different format, much to the chagrin of Katie Caldwell.
We'll figure it out.
I think
anything else for this week, Nick?
Nah, that's it, man. Let's get out.
All right. This has been episode 48 of the Gridiron Podcast. And as always, please drop us a like, subscribe, listen to us, share it with your friends, and you can even email us. Our email is thegridironpodcast3. That is the Gridiron Podcast number 3 at gmail.com. We love to hear from you. We've heard from people from New Zealand. A guy emailed us saying he listened to us just on repeat as he drove cross country. It's a little skeptical, but that's okay. I'm kidding.
Hey,
we love that.
I mean, Sean's got the voice to hear for hours. I will say that.
Oh, thank you, Nick.
No.
For Nick Shook and the absent Katie Caldwell, who once again is delivering a baby. It's not her. She's just there for moral support. And we support that.
Yeah, we do. I'm not doing anything, Sean. Finish it.
I was waiting. I was waiting for you to interrupt me.
No, I have nothing to say.
All right. As always, live life in the fast lane.
And don't forget to honor the miracle of life.
Good night, Canada.
Could have done better.
Yeah, a little
Good night,
bit.
Ray Gun.
Sorry.